everyone, and welcome back to the channel. HeirofCarthage here, and yes, we've got another Rome 2 2v2 battle. Now this one is not sub-commanders. This is a standard 2v2 battle, and it's going to be taking place amongst power factions too, which should be fun. So we're going to see some of the stronger factions. We've got Saba and Rome going up against Tylis and Boii. So this one should be an entertaining matchup. Rome is going real heavy on infantry over here. I'm seeing front line of Hastati. There's 4 of them up front, and then there's another 6 in a second line. And then Rome has armored legionaries in its final line back here. Now, armored legionaries, interesting unit. Their attack is not quite as high as Havoc, but they have a massive 95 armor, and they have 51 melee defense. Very, very tanky units. So interesting to see those there. We haven't seen them in a long time. And for Saba, we're going to have a line of Sabaean swordsmen behind some slingers, and those are protected by some desert levy, and then a second line of Mosgat marauders, which are pretty solid axe units. Not something that we've typically seen fare super well as an entire front line, but definitely capable axe units when they get into combat. We've also got Sabaean camel cataphracts in huge numbers, and we've got the Marib camel cataphract generals. So 4 Sabaean camel cataphracts, 1 Marib, 1 camel spear. Now let's go check out the barbarian side of things here, bringing their dangerous swords into combat. They've got Celtic slingers up front. There's going to be 4 of those, and then a big line of tribal warriors, no doubt. And remember, tribal warriors are a defensive heavy sword unit that hits hard on the charge and then grinds into combat with their heavy armor. You'll notice that they also have 95 armor, a lot like the armored legionaries, though their attack is considerably lower. Their defense is higher, though, too, at 70. So very high defense, whereas you can see the Roman over here only at 51. So gives you an idea of just how tanky sometimes those units can be. In the line behind them, there is a bunch of Celtic tribesmen, presumably to protect from cavalry. And then we're going to see some noble horse. I see 2 units of those. 1 unit just went hidden back here in this little scrub, so we'll catch it later. And then for the Boii, I imagine we're going to see Oathsworn and sword followers, and that is exactly what we see. They're mixed together along this line. I believe I see 2 Oathsworn and 4 sword followers, a third Oathsworn in the back. I see 3 heavy horse breaking out wide, and then a lot of levy freemen for protection, and a couple of lighter sword units as well. That is another noble horse. Wow, that is a very heavy cavalry contingent for the Tylisians there. Now, Rome does have a little bit of skirmishing. They've got 2 auxiliary Balearic slingers, but otherwise they do not have they don't have any cavalry. Which is somewhat risky in terms of trying to keep yourself protected, but Rome has just opted for basically throwing a crap load of armor and damage potential onto the battlefield. Hastati, for instance, not great against cavalry, but enough of them can be a pain. And then the armored legionaries would resist cavalry quite well just because of how heavy they are infantry-wise. So we'll see what happens here, but Saba is already kind of making some aggressive moves here towards the flank, and this noble horse gets a charge without a counter charge by the camel cataphracts, which is not good because the camel cataphracts live or die on the charge. Nice intercept here by the camel spears. Definitely need to start cycle charging, yep, and that's what we're going to see. But we got infantry support coming for the Tylisians, but there is a lot of support headed out for Saba as well. So both players now pouring support towards this flank. There's tribal warriors, levy freemen, other units moving in that direction. So we'll just kind of keep an eye out on this fight as it develops. I'm curious what's going to happen over here. We're using infantry to fix so that the cavalry can rest and cycle charge. And getting an interception here of Sabaean swordsmen. Yeah, the players are just kind of layering in now. Look at this. Camel Cataphract gets cleanly into the Celtic slingers. Going to take a javelin volley from those swords, but at least take some of the Celtic slingers out. It looks like that Rome and Saba are pushing hard to overload the flank with Tylis, but they're going to have to be careful, of course, because Boii are not going away, and they've got a lot of capability as well. Sword followers going toe-to-toe with Hastati. They will certainly clean out Hastati, but remember, there are 2 lines of Hastati and the armored legionaries. Balearic slingers get hit early here by the heavy horse, and I'm not surprised. It's going to be very difficult for Rome to protect their skirmishers, to the point where I almost wonder whether you should even bring skirmishers if you're going to not bring cavalry, because it's just so hard to protect them. But I guess that you probably do want to, ultimately, despite the challenge. So Rome's going to keep pushing forward infantry. Their first 2 units of Hastati get taken down pretty handily. And then we've got a lot of units moving forward for Boii. Let's see how this fight's going on. I feel like this fight is going to determine the outcome of the battle, potentially. And the heavy horse are starting to take a good beating, but there's a lot of tribal warriors nearby as well. But there's also a lot of Sabaean swordsmen moving in, so very curious to see how this one turns out. Rome has layered in its Hastati to start the grinding process. And I honestly, I like that call. This Oathsworn will beat that Armored Legionary head-on, most likely. I like that call, but I like how the Legionaries are being brought in after the Barbarian swords are forced to get tired grinding down the Hastati, because the Armored Legionaries will be much more dangerous after that point, because the enemy is going to be tired and struggling. That said, the Heavy Horse is just going to run completely amok back here unless Saba wins its fights and gets freed. But there's still Noble Horse back here, and there's still a lot of Tylisian troops here. Those Tribal Warriors are having a bit of a time here. Some of them are getting chewed up. I mean, Saba is looking pretty okay over here right now. And then there's Armored Legionaries supporting against that Gallo-Thracian infantry. Let's see how this fight looks. Oh, look, this Hastati got in and encircled that Oathsworn. That Oathsworn's going to be having a fight now. Sword followers and Oathsworn over here struggling. And Rome is just using that heavy infantry to make life harder for the heavy cavalry in the backfield. And then the Legatus is chasing as well, and then it looks like there's some Sabaean swordsmen over here to help support also. It's possible that Rome and Saba just kind of bury the barbarians in swords. Look at this. Saba does come out the victor over here, all of that Noble Horse wrapped up. This does not bode well for the barbarian factions, because they're trying to grind down all these Armored Legionaries, and they might be able to do it, but they're definitely not going to be able to do it if their backlines start getting threatened with cavalry. And look at this, see that Heavy Horse just having a hard time grinding through the Armored Legionaries. The horse will hit hard on the charge, but that armor negates a ton of damage off of the cavalry, and it just makes it difficult for those units to be finished whenever they're not otherwise engaged. Here comes the Oathsworn, held late. The Slingers are really just shooting a firestorm over here into this Roman infantry. And there's Tribal Warriors headed that way. There might be a little bit of trouble over here for Rome to finish this one, because that Oathsworn came in late and fresh. But there are other Roman units nearby that can continue to support. It's just those Slingers are taking a toll. But presumably, Saba, now that it has some cavalry free, might come do something about it. There is still a Noble Horse over here, though. Alright, sorry for the piercing bark in the middle of that one, but my dog had seen, well, I can't say it or else he'll get all upset again, but it's a mammal. It begins with SQ, and he has it out for them, and he had gone out in the backyard and treated it. So in any case, yeah, back to the battle. Let's just kind of see if we can understand what's left to unfold. Honestly, like, I think Rome and Saba are in pretty good shape. The only place I'm worried is over here, where you've got quite a lot of Oathsworn and Tribal Warriors left, as Rome's trying to grind through Sword Followers, Tribal Warriors, Oathsworn. But still, these Armored Legionaries in this long, grindy kind of fight are going to be brutal. They have really high attack, so they score a lot of hits. They don't necessarily have really high damage, but I mean, they're going to be scoring hits very frequently in combat. And so they will definitely grind away at enemies. And then with Saba's support over there, Rome is holding on despite the challenging situation. Whereas here, Saba and Rome have basically wrapped up Tylis on their original position. Now Tylis still has a unit or two around over here, but again, from the original position, they've been wrapped up. So now the Boii are in really bad shape. You can see they are winning fights, though. The Oathsworn and the Warriors are doing very, very well. But again, look how difficult it is for some of these units to finish off the Armored Legionaries that were over here. And then look at these Sabaean swordsmen coming in to make it even more difficult by giving the barbarians something else to chew on, while they finally do win some of those fights. And look, there's even more Armored Legionaries pouring in from over here, as well as more, it looks like Marauders at this point. And oh my gosh, this Marauder has 232 kills. Holy cow. That is an absolute wood chipper of a unit. Alright, rest in pepperonis, you sweet Celtic slingers. You did amazing work in this battle, and you are to be commended, but this is how it ends for you. Despite your pretty epic performance, you're going to be absolutely slaughtered. Yes, these Celtic Slingers did a tremendous job. They are the main reason, I believe, why you're seeing the Roman line having mostly lost over here, but then, of course, in the end, it was propped up by allies, and then this cavalry comes in and saves them from the wrath of those slingers, which had just been peppering them the entire fight, and doing so quite effectively. But this one's going to be a wrap for Rome and Saba. Now, a lot of people, see Rome, and they see them lose a lot on the channel right now, and they think, oh, Rome's not even very good in their own game. They are a power faction, and I think that probably what you've seen in a lot of the matches is players might be playing a certain rule set that doesn't allow more than X number of the same unit, or so much of that, or maybe forces more balance. And in a forced balance scenario, Rome is not quite as good as some factions because their cavalry is kind of okay and their skirmish options are expensive only. And so that leaves Rome in a bit of a tougher position. When Rome is allowed to take this option where they just bury you in heavy sword infantry, then, in my opinion, they're much more dangerous here. These armored legionaries, for instance, and pick Avocati cohort, whatever you want to do here, but the armored legionaries with that extra, they have the same armor they're rolling around as tribal warriors and Oathsworn. And so they may not hit quite as hard on the charge, but when they come into a fight after you've already had to kill like 200 Hastati, and then you're supposed to cut through another 120 armored legionaries, yeah, it's not going to go down very easy. And if we take a look at the stats here, you can see the sword followers did. They chewed up tons of Hastati. And these Oathsworn might have actually chewed up some armored legionaries as well. But I'm guessing that a lot of these numbers over here are the Hastati. And essentially, it's kind of like the whole Zap Brannigan deathbot strategy, where he said he sent wave after wave of his men to their deaths until they hit their predetermined kill limit. That's kind of what this is. Rome's kind of like the Zap Brannigan deathbot strategy. They just send all these Hastati in, and the enemy gets so worn out and tired that they can't finish the end of the fight. You can see that here, the numbers, 2,250 Romans, so a lot more men in the field than the other factions. And they took a lot of losses, too. He took more losses than both of the players who actually lost. But that's to be expected when you go down this strategy. And so it's an interesting one. So look at some of these armored legionaries, though, getting a lot of kills. These are tough units, as I mentioned. It takes the enemy a long time to kill them, and they are definitely going to be scoring hits while that's happening. Callie did some really nice work with his cavalry there, despite having gotten caught without the charge. The push of support to that flank ended up being extremely important. And so he pushed out his units to support. Rome came over to support, and that fight ended up being absolutely critical. And so it was good that they pushed their support that way. And that Muscat Marauder right there, holy cow, like I said, wish I would have seen more of that story. But these Sabaean Camel Cataphracts were owning very tough units. And then Darkle over here with his Boii faction, he got some good kills on this Oathsworn, some nice kills on some of the sword followers. And then the Oathsworn General, it doesn't show a ton of kills here, but this is the one that was there till close to the end, grinding down those armored legionaries. So it really did not do bad, despite the kill count up there making it look a little less. This one Oathsworn here is probably the only one that wasn't really on a decent trajectory. And then Tylis here, if we take a look at their army, the Noble Horse just kind of got shut down in that long melee. Again, good job sending support out there. It wasn't enough to turn that fight in the end, but again, both players I feel like were doing the right thing. You have to get out there and you have to take that fight seriously and try and win it, because clearly that cavalry fight out on the left, I guess, of the submitting faction here was definitely critical to the rest of the battle. So GG to all players, Darkle, Kipari, Hotel, and Callie. Appreciate all of them. So thank you, and I will be back soon with some more Total War Rome 2 battles for you.